Okay, so welcome everybody to today's class. Just one point of etiquette. Subal Prabhu, you cannot chant and listen at the same time. Your concentration is not 100% on chanting nor 100% on the class. So,
okay, thank you, Mother.
Yeah. When we get to the Yuga of the Holy Name, we'll go more on that. But chanting is an exclusive activity. It should have your whole attention. Okay, so today we're going to be looking into the Tulsi Prayers, which are very special prayers. So I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about the nature of prayers and the mood for prayers. I'm starting with something from The Nectar of Devotion by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In one of the 64 items of practicing devotional service, he describes submission, which is about praying and submitting yourself before the Lord with your prayers. When we talked about Lord Narasimhadev, we talked about it then the one after this, which was offering notable prayers by our acharyas. So in 3 types of submission are described by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I'm not going to get too technical, but just try and pay attention to the mood of the prayers that are being offered. The first one is called very feelingly offering prayers. It has a Sanskrit name called Samprarthanatmika, which you don't need to know. But very feelingly offering prayers means you're putting your heart into the prayer. And the example is here from Padma Puran, where is a statement by one of the devotees praying to the Lord. My Lord, I know that young girls have a natural affection for young boys, and young boys have a natural affection for young girls. I am praying at your lotus feet, that my mind may become attracted to you in the same spontaneous way. So Srila Prabhupada explains this is being offered. It's a material example, but it talks about spontaneously. When boys and girls are young, they spontaneously become attracted to somebody because they think there's the most special thing in the whole world for them. And so the devotee is praying that with his great feeling intent, that he gets the same attraction for the Supreme Lord, free from any desire for any profit or from any other cause. So that's the first type. The second type is called humbly submitting oneself, coming in humility for submission. Its name is Dainya Bodhika, and again, you don't need to know the name, but I'm just giving it to you for reference. Padma Puran, again, there is a statement in submission. My dear Lord, there is no sinful entity who is more of a sinner than myself, nor is there a greater offender than myself. I am so gratefully sinful and offensive that when I come to confess my sinful activities before you, I am ashamed. So this is somebody who's sincerely saying, I think there's no one more fallen than myself. Now you may have heard that one of the devotees, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples came to him and said something similar. He said, there's no one more sinful than me, there's no one more fallen than me. And Prabhupada said to him in reply, you're not the greatest of anything, not even the most sinful. Just forget about it. Because even if we're making that statement falsely, in imitation, then our feelings are not natural. It's also false ego. I want to make myself to be the greatest devotee, so let me say I'm the greatest sinner. So it must be done with feeling. So that's what we're talking about, humbly submitting oneself. So as soon as this is done, the Lord excuses the sincere devotee. But that does not mean that one should take advantage of the Lord's causeless mercy and expect to be excused again and again. Prabhupada would always make a joke of the Christians who would go to church once a week and ask to be forgiven their sins, and then the next week they'd just go and do the same things all over and over again. So Prabhupada is saying this is not the mood for this humbly submitting oneself. If I genuinely think that I'm offending the Lord by being sinful, by being an offender, then I will not want to repeat it again. I'll actually want to try and do something to stop it. And so that's the second stage. The third stage is called lalasa mayi, desiring some perfectional stage, or desiring to want to go to one's natural position. In Narada Pancharatra, there is a statement of submission accompanied by the desire for perfection. The devotee says, "My dear Lord, when shall that day come when you'll ask me to fan your body according to your pleasure? You will say, just fan me in this way." So this is not a big ego, I want to be in the spiritual world now, but it's actually a prayer of greed. I want to be put into my natural position. I want to taste that, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this world. But one of his internal reasons for coming to this world was because he wanted to taste that Radharani tastes. So a desire to be in one's position where we can offer service, and we can taste that relationship with Krishna. So, okay. Srila Prabhupada remarks, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. He should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. If one develops this lolyam, or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter the kingdom of God. So in the early days, one of the outstanding devotees in America, actually, when they came into this temple, I'm not sure which temple it was, all the new devotees were taught that they had to cry when they were chanting their japa. So they were encouraged to develop this crying mood. So it's not that we physically have to cry, but we have to learn to be desperate. Prabhupada gave the example that it's like the genuine cry of a child for its mother. So you know when the child all of a sudden turns around and mother's not there, there's a genuine cry. So this mood we have to take on when we're in devotional service. So this mood of prayer. So 3 examples we've given. Very feelingly offering prayers, very humbly submitting oneself, and desiring a perfectional stage or to be in one's natural position. Okay, so now I'm going to go to look at the Tulsi prayers themselves. So meditate on the mood of the prayers while we're going through these prayers, and I'll have some more examples after we've read through the meanings. So Tulsi Maharani, many of you may know, is a very special divine personality. I think you'll learn much more about Tulsi in this Tadiya Seva class, which may have been renamed something else, where you'll actually learn how to serve Tulsi. So I won't tell you the whole story now, because I think you'll get it then. But Tulsi Maharani, there's a Leela. She came down in the material world as Vrinda Devi, married to a demon called Jalandhar. And Krishna had to defeat Jalandhar, but because of Vrinda Devi's piety, Jalandhar was undefeatable. Her chastity was protecting her husband. So Lord Vishnu had to cheat Vrinda Devi by coming in the guise of her husband to pretend that he was her husband in order to make her unchaste. And as soon as she realized that this person who was with her was not her husband, she cursed him to become a rock. And thus he became Shaligram Shila. But he counter-cursed her to become a plant on the earth and stay here for a long time. But More than that, Tulsi as Vrinda Devi is in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan. She comes as the main servant to Purnamasi. And Purnamasi is Yogamaya, and she's in charge of setting up all the pastimes for Radha and Krishna. And Vrinda Devi is the main actor in setting up these pastimes and the main arranger. She's in charge of arranging all the other gopis to do their different services. So this prayer is especially to that incarnation of Tulsi, that original one in the spiritual world. We're praying to her to become a part of those pastimes and to be able to serve her in some way. Now, here in this prayer, in this picture on this page, this is actually the prostitute who came to try and dissuade Haridas Thakur from his bhajan. So she came on because the king paid her to come to try and break Haridas Thakur's bhajan. But after sitting with him for 3 nights, while he was chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, she surrendered to him and she became his disciple. And he asked her to sit in front of the Tulsi, give up everything, just wear a simple cloth and give up all her possessions. And he gave her his accommodation and he left to go somewhere else and said, you just sit here in front of Tulsi Maharani and chant and you'll perfect your life. So in that way she became a great devotee. Tulsi also comes up in the story of Mrigarari the hunter. When Narad Muni came across Mrigarari the hunter, who was half killing animals, because that's what he'd learnt in his family. His father had taught him to half kill animals instead of killing them directly. And Narad Muni came to him and tried to persuade him that this was very sinful activity to half kill animals. So, can you keep yourselves muted, everybody, please? So Mrigarari the hunter, Narada Muni showed Mrigarari by a vision what his karma would be for killing so many animals. And Mrigarari instantly repented and surrendered to Narada Muni. Such is the power of a pure devotee. And Narada Muni also told him to sit down on the bank of the river in a small hut and serve a Tulsi tree and just chant all day long. And when Mrigarari was worried how he would maintain himself, Narad Muni says, don't worry, everything will be supplied. And because he was taking up such a saintly lifetime, all the villagers would bring him more food than he could eat. And he complained to Narad Muni, you're giving me far too much, I don't need so much. So this Tulsi is very important for us. If we can chant in front of Tulsi, or if we can chant in a temple room, then that greatly helps us improve our chanting. So let's go to these prayers. There are 3 steps here. We've got the Tulsi Pranam, which is the first verse that we chant. Vrindai Tulsi Devyai Priyaye Kesvasacha Vishnu Bhakti Pradai Devi Satchivichai Namo Namah. Vrindai Tulsi Devyai Priyaye Kesvasacha Vishnu Bhakti Pradai Devi Satchivichai Namo Namah. Now you'll notice here it's written Krishna, but I'm saying Vishnu. Most of the songbooks have now changed to Krishna, but the actual original Sanskrit says Vishnu. So the word for word, Vrindai, unto Vrinda, Tulsi Devyai, unto Tulsi Devi, Priyaye, who is dear, Keshavasya, to Lord Keshava, Cha, and Krishna Bhakti, devotional service to Krishna, Pradai, who bestows, Devi, O goddess, Satyavachai, unto Satyavati, Namaha, Namaha. Repeated obeisances. I offer my repeated obeisances unto Vrinda, Srimati Tulsi Devi, who is very dear to Lord Keshava. O goddess, you bestow pure devotional service to Krishna, and you possess the highest truth. So the similar sentiment is repeated in the first verse of this Tulsi Kirtan. Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Prayers Namo Namo. Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Hey Abhilasi. Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Hey Abhilasi. Namo Namo. Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namo. Namaha Namaha. Bowing again and again. Tulasi, O Tulsi. Krishna Prayasi, O beloved of Krishna. Namo Namaha. Repeated obeisances. Radha Krishna Seva, the service of Radha and Krishna. Pabo, I will obtain. A, Abhilasi. A, this. Abhilashi, I am desirous. O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire is to obtain the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So you see here that the person who wrote this prayer is expressing, whose name is Krishna Das, we'll find it in the last paragraph, is expressing his desire. He wants this perfection. He wants to obtain the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Text 2. Ye tumara sharanaloy, taravancha purna hoy. Ye tumara sharanaloy, taravancha purna hoy. Kripa kori koro tare, Vrindavanasi. Kripa kori koro tare, Vrindavanasi. Yea, whoever, Tomara, your, Sharanaloy, take shelter, Tara, his, Vancha, desires, Purna hoy, are fulfilled, Kripa kori, being merciful, Koro, you make, Tare, him, Vrindavan Vasi, a resident of Vrindavan. Whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. Text 3. Moreya Vilas Kunjadiyo Vas. Moreya Vilas Kunjadiyo Vas. Nayane Hiri Bosada Yugala Viparasi. Nayane Hiri Bosada Yugala Viparasi. Mora, my, a, this. Abhilash, desire. Vilas Kunje, in the pleasure groves. Dio, please give. Vas, a residence. Nayane, with my eyes. Hiribo, I will behold. Sada, always. Yugala Rupa Rasi, the waves of the divine couple's beauty. My desire is that you will always give me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Text 4. Hey Nivedana Dara Sakir Anurata Guru. Hey Nivedana Dara Sakir Anurata Guru. Sevaradi Karadu Guru Nijadansi. Sevaradi Karadu Guru Nijadansi. A Nivedana, this request. Dharo, please keep. Sakira, of one of the cowherd damsels. Anugata Kuru, make me a follower. Seva Adhikara, the privilege of devotional service. Diye, bestowing. Koro, please make. Nija Dasi, your own maidservant. I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. Text 5. Dina Krishna dase koi, ye namo raho. Dina Krishna dase koi, ye namo raho. Shri Radha Govinda Prema, sada yena basi. Shri Radha Govinda Prema, sada yena basi. Dina Krishna Dase, the fallen and lonely servant of Krishna. And here you see in brackets, named Krishna Das, because the writer of this song is called Krishna Das. Hoi, praise. Hey, this. Yena, just like. Mora hoi, is mine. Sri Radha Govinda Prema, in the ecstatic love for Sri Radha and Govinda. Sada, always. Yena, just like. Bahasi, swimming. This very fallen and lonely servant of Krishna prays, may I always swim in the love of Sri Sri Radha and Govinda. So you can see in this prayer how the devotee is doing most of those things we described, humbly submitting himself, desiring a perfectional stage, and very feelingly offering those prayers. Now, the last one is the production of mantra. It's in a different mood, and so we'll recite that first, and then we'll discuss a little bit about that. Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyari kani cha tani tani pranasyanti pradikshina pade pade. Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyari kani cha tani tani pranasyanti pradakshina pade pade. Yani kani, whatever, cha, and papani, sins, brahmahatya, killing of a brahmana, adhikani, and so on, cha, also, tani, tani, all of them, pranasyanti, are destroyed, pradakshinaha, by the circumambulation of Tulsi Devi, pade pade, at every step. Those who circumambulate Srimati Tulsi Devi step by step destroy whatever sins they have committed, even the killing of a brahmana. So this prayer is a different mood, and this is what we call phalasruti. You'll find in many places through the Bhagavatam and many of the astakas that you read, if you read any astakas, often at the end of the astakas there's phalasruti. Usually you'll get 8 verses of the astaka, and then you'll get a 9th verse which tells you what the benefit of reciting it is, which is called phalasruti. Basically means the fruit of the recitation. So this is not designed for the devotees. This is designed to attract other people to take up the service to Tulsi. Because Tulsi Maharani is a pure devotee, even in her plant form. And by anyone offering service to her, they get great spiritual benefit. It's called Agyat Sukriti, because even without knowing, they can get this benefit. Agyat means without knowing. So in our temple program, Srila Prabhupada has brought this Tulsi Puja in as a public, as part of the public program. So many people just walk off the streets, and after the arti, unknowingly, first in the arti, they're paying their obeisances and offering prayers to the spiritual master. And then unknowingly also, we've got, of course, Narasimha Dev prayers, so they can help remove their obstacles. And then Tulsi prayers, which unknowingly they're serving Tulsi Maharani. We ask them to do parikrama around her, and we ask them to offer water to her. And in that way, they're doing some service to a pure devotee, and they get immense benefit from that. So Prabhupada brought this in as a very what you call one of his secret weapons to bring people to Krishna consciousness. If they just happen to come to the temple, unknowingly they can offer some pure devotional service unto the pure devotee. So this is called Falasruti, and it's to encourage outsiders. It's not so much for the devotees. Our aim is, as described by Krishna Das in his prayer, our aim is for the pure devotional service and to be able to serve Tulsi Maharani and the other associates in Vraj and serve Radha and Krishna. So first I just want to go on to read some quotes by Srila Prabhupada about the worship of Tulsi, because it's important also in our mood. Most of these, okay, we could do that. Most of these quotes are showing a verse from the Padma Puran. So let me just put that up first. Yeah. Okay, so now let's have a look at this verse, because most of the quotes by Srila Prabhupada about Tulsi are quoting this verse from Padma Puran. Aradhanam sarvesham Vishnu aradhanam param tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samarchanam. This you will also study later, but we'll just go through it now because it's important to this section on Tulsi worship. Aradhananam, of varieties of worship. Sarvesham, all. Vishnuho, of Lord Vishnu. Aradhanam, worship. Param, the most exalted. Tasmat, and above such worship of Lord Vishnu. Parataram, of greater value. Devi, O goddess. Tadiyanam, of persons in relationship with Lord Vishnu. Samarchanam, rigid and firm worship. This is Lord Shiva speaking to Goddess Durga. My dear Devi, although the Vedas recommend the worship of the demigods, the worship of Lord Vishnu is the topmost. Vishnu Aradhanam Param, worship of Lord Vishnu is the topmost. However, above the worship of Lord Vishnu is rendering service to the Vaishnavas, who are related to Lord Vishnu. So, Tadiyanam is anything in relation to Lord Vishnu. It includes his weapons, it includes Tulsi Maharani, it includes various other things. Anything in relation to Lord Vishnu. So let me just read some of these quotes of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, Lord Shiva's instruction should be taken. He says the best worship is to worship Vishnu. Vishnu Aradhanam Param. When Shiva was asked by Parvati, what method of worship do you consider first class? Then he said, the first class worship is worshipping Lord Vishnu. Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Aradhanam. Then he said, worship of Vishnu is the best. There are many demigods. He recommended Vishnu worship is the best. And better than Vishnu worship is to worship the Vaishnava, Tadiyanam, Aradhanam. Tadiya means his servant, or one who is, or what is, in relationship with him. just like we are worshipping this plant, Tulsi. We are not worshipping all plants, but because this Tulsi has a very intimate connection with Krishna and Vishnu, therefore we are worshipping. Tadiyanam Aradhanam. Similarly, anything who is intimately related with Krishna, worship of that thing is better than worship of Vishnu, Krishna. Another quote. They're all similar, but they're slightly different. So I'm just going to read through them just so that you get a good idea of Prabhupada's intention. My dear Parvati, of all methods of worship, Vishnu worship is topmost. There are many demigods to worship, even Lord Shiva's worship. But Lord Shiva says Vishnu worship is best. Then he says again, Tasmat Parataram Devi. My dear Devi, better than Vishnu worship is Tadiyanam Samarchanam. Tadiya means those who are in relationship with Vishnu, Tadiya. Just like his devotee, Tadiya. Tulsi Vriksha, Tulsi is Tadiya. Or temple Tadiya, preaching Tadiya. Tadiyanam Samarchanam. That is, this is Bhagavat. So Lord Shiva recommends, of all the methods of worship, Vishnu worship is the best, and better than Vishnu worship is to worship his devotee or things in relation to him. Tadiyanam is Bhagavat. Here it is also said Tadiyanam, Bhagavat Sevaya. This book, Bhagavat, spoken by the devotee Bhagavat, this should be taken very seriously daily. Otherwise we will not understand who is Bhagavan. Therefore, nityam, daily or constantly, 24 hours a day, we have to mold our life in such a way that 24 hours, not a single moment leading aside, we should be engaged in Bhagavat Sevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, spiritual master, Tulsi Devi, the temple, the preaching, the books, these are all Bhagavata. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And just this last one quote here. When Parvati inquired from Lord Shiva what is the best form of worship, he advised Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Worship of Vishnu is the best. Then he said, Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samarachanam. And greater than Vishnu Aradhana, Vishnu worship, is to worship Tadiyanam, anything connected with Vishnu, anything. That is Vaishnava. Just like we are worshipping Tulsi plant. Why Tulsi plant? It is a plant even, not even a human being. Tadiyanam, because Tulsi is liked by Krishna. Similarly, anything in connection with Krishna, to worship is better than Vishnu worship. Okay, so So briefly, just revising the Tulsi Prayers. You'll have another chance again. I'll put them up again for you. The main prayers. So the first prayer, Vrindai Tulsi Devi, is worshipping Tulsi Devi. It is showing her merciful nature because we're appealing to her for Krishna Prem. And thus we're establishing a relationship with her because we want to please her to get Krishna Prem. The second one, Tulsi Kirtan, which was the 5 verses, is praying for pure devotional service. And then the Tulsi Pradakshina Mantra, which is the Phalashruti, which is to attract non-devotees to engage in devotional service. Now I want to offer a section here on different aspects of prayer. So this is this has been combined from several sources, including from the Christian source, because they do a lot of analysis of their things. And it also comes from Rupa Goswami's writings, and what we got in the first part about the 3 different moods of prayer. So these are all combined and put together into 5 main aspects, or you could say components of prayer. And we'll look at how they fit into a couple of different prayers. So the first one is glorification. So all the glorification, we'll look at, we start off with the glorification. We saw in the last class when we were talking about prayers for protection, how Mother Uttara when the first thing she did, she's under threat for her life and her child's life, but she says, no, you're Mahayogin, you're the greatest mystic. So she starts off by glorifying him, even though she's really in fear of her life, and it's an urgent situation. She's got no time to lose, but still the first thing she does is glorify. So we're saying we know that the object of our prayer is in a topmost position, an unequal position. So therefore we glorify some of their great qualities. The second step is to acknowledge the merciful nature. We're praying to Tulsi Maharani because she's known to give Krishna Prem to people. She's known to make people a resident of Vrindavan. So because she's known to do that, we're hoping for her mercy. So we're acknowledging her mercy and we're glorifying that. Number 3 is relationship. We express our relationship. In this prayer, we know that the devotee, we're asking to be engaged in service directly even. Humility, expression of humility. Number 4, feeling ourselves incapable of achieving the goal without the help of the person we're praying to. So by ourselves, we acknowledge our own incompetence, our inability to change our own life. We discussed that also in prayers of protection. How when we pray for something, we're actually establishing a relationship. And we're also saying that I don't have the power. It gives up our false ego. We're expressing humility. Please help me. And appealing for mercy. So we've just expressed our humility, how we're unqualified. But despite our disqualification, because the person we're praying to is all merciful, we're still hoping for that mercy. So, and we'll just have a discussion for some time. I want to look at 2 prayers. This prayer we looked at when we were discussing prayers for protection with Lord Narasimhadev. So, yes, okay, Stephanie, please ask. You have your hand up.
When we circumambulate Tulsi daily, we usually go around and then turn around, then go around. What is the reason for that?
We go around, sorry?
When we're going around, we usually
Oh, you mean the little circle that we do? Huh?
Why do we do that? Yes.
When we're going around Tulsi, we do a little circle. Yes. Okay, so the reason for that, many devotees don't do it and do their little circle anywhere and everywhere. But the reason for that is because it's generally done in front of either Srila Prabhupada or in front of the altar. Because it's an offense to circumambulate anyone in front of the altar. So actually the altar is closed at that time, but we're remembering that Radha Krishna are inside the altar. So instead of going circumambulating directly in front of them, we do a little reverse circle just to show our respect to Radha and Krishna who are behind the closed doors. And sometimes you can also do it, if Prabhupada is also in the room, you can do it in front of him.
All right.
So that's the reason.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so coming back to this one. Okay, so I want you to comment on this one, how you think this prayer, we discussed a little bit, how you think this prayer fulfills the aspects of prayer we talked about. This is the one from yesterday. Uttara Uvacha, Pahi Pahi Mahayogin, Deva Deva Jagatpate, Nanyam Tvad Abhayam Pasye, Yatra Mrityu Prasparam. Uttara said, O Lord of Lords, Lord of the universe, you are the greatest of mystics. Please protect me, for there is no one else who can save me from the clutches of death in this world of duality. O my Lord, you are all-powerful. A fiery iron arrow is coming towards me fast. O Lord, let it burn me personally if you so desire. But please do not let it burn and abort my embryo. Please do me this favor, my Lord. So some comments of how these 5 aspects are met in this prayer. If they're all there, tell me if they're all there or not. Which aspects can you see and which you can't see?
Mataji, all the aspects are there.
Okay, can you describe some of them?
Yes, Mataji. First, Uttara is glorifying Krishna, saying he's the Lord of the universe and the greatest of mystics. And then
Let me put it on.
yes, she's
We'll just put that up.
appealing for mercy and to save her child, and she's being very humble, and she's acknowledging his merciful nature by telling that no one else can protect except him. And
Okay. Does
yes,
anyone?
Mataji.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add? Sudarshan Prabhu, you're unmuted. Do you want to add something?
I think Mataji, all the aspects of prayers are there in this because Uttara glorifies by the Lord by saying that you are the most powerful, and and she also talks about the merciful nature, and she uses the word please, do not let it burn, and she connects with the relationship, saying that you are the one who can help me, you are the one. The humility, do me the favor, appealing for mercy. So I think that all the aspects of prayers are there.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything? Hare Krishna Chatura, please.
Yeah, in these 2 verses, and Uttara express the glorification of the law, and the law is the supreme law of the whole universe, and also he is the protector of every living entities. No one else can save the living entity from the clutch of Maya in this material world. And then Uttavas continued to pray that she's very, she says very humbly that I am not worth to be saved, but please save my embroil. And so this is not only the humility, but also with holiness. And so at last, and she appealed for mercy because the law is all powerful.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Now we'll take this Tootsie prayer and we'll have a look again at this Tootsie prayer in the same way. So this is the main prayer by Krishna Das. So would somebody else who hasn't said anything yet today, would somebody else like to answer about how the Tulsi prayers fulfill some of these aspects of prayers? Amrita.
I'll try, Mataji. It's like glorification is, O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna. That's the glorification of Tulsi Maharani. And Mataji, I'm not able to understand the second point. Acknowledge the merciful nature. Acknowledge the merciful nature of the one to whom we are.
To the one to whom we're praying. So, like in the second verse here, where it says, when you bestow your mercy on him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. So that's how merciful she is to people who take shelter for her. See, that second verse is doing that. It's saying, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. Bestowing your mercy on him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. Like that. Okay. Any other points you came up with?
And Mataji, relationship we can we like give this? I beg you to make me the follower of cowherd images of Raja and give me the privilege of devotional service and make me a maid servant.
Yes, very good.
This is a relationship, and humility is like this very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays to you. And appealing for mercy, maybe like, may I always swim in the love of Krishna, Sri Radha and Govinda.
Good. Does anyone else want to add anything?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, I'll try.
Yes, please.
The aspects of glorification is that glorifying Tulsi, which is beloved of Krishna. That acknowledge the merciful nature is that whosoever is taking shelter of you can get his or her wishes fulfilled. So you are always bestowing your mercy. And relationship is that looking to be your maid servant or to be a follower of the Kaha temples of Raja. And humility is in the last one that I'm a very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna who is praying to you. And appealing for mercy is that I beg you to make me a follower, and also that my desire is that you will also give me a residence with the pleasure towards the Vrindavan Dham.
Good. Thank you. So Tulsi Prayers in our morning program. So I've spoken how Srila Prabhupada has nicely situated it for devotees, for outsiders who come into the temple, and they get a chance to serve the pure devotee. But there's another special thing about the placement that Srila Prabhupada has of Tulsi Prayers in the morning program. So you see what happens after Tulsi Prayers. After Tulsi Prayers, generally in the morning program. Sorry, please repeat.
We circumambulate.
And after the prayers are finished?
We bow down and tell the prayers.
And after that?
We pour water for the Tulsi Mati.
And after that? What happens next? In a temple program, in your own home you might do things a little differently, but in the temple program, what do we do? Hare Krishna Prashanta Dasi, you're unmuted.
Mataji, will read Shiksha Ashtakam after that?
Shikshastakam. And what comes after Shikshastakam?
10 offenses.
And after that?
Chanting. We do chanting.
We do chanting. Now, I want you to see the connection between all these things. We're doing Tulsi Kirtan. We're praying for what? We're praying for the highest love of Godhead. And then we're doing Shikshastakam prayers, which is also describing the great qualities of chanting the holy name. And then we're doing the 10 offenses to the holy name. And then we're doing our chanting. We're doing our japa. So all these things are building up to make it an ideal situation to do our japa. So some of us are not so fortunate as to be able to join the temple program every day. But what I'd like you all to take away from this whole series of classes on the daily prayers is the importance of the prayers and how they actually are helping to build our devotional service 24 hours a day. So, I mean, I start my chanting before Mangalarti, but before I do that, I recite Shikshastakam and I recite the Tulsi Prayers before I start chanting. Because I see that as a part of my chanting. It's preparing my mind in the proper mood to start chanting. Do you see the relationship? Does anyone want to comment on that?
Mataji, are we going to discuss Shikshastakam meaning?
We are going to do Shikshastakam, but we're going to do that next month when we do Yuga of the Holy Name. Because Shikshastakam will take a minimum of an hour and a half to discuss. Probably I'd like to spend more time on it. We'll see how much time we've got. If I can spend a couple of classes on it, we'll see. But I'd like to spend a good amount of time on Shikshastakam. So we're going to do that with Yuga of the Holy Name and also the 10 offenses, because I'm going to take the main points from Harinam Chintamani, which is a book by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, which is a basis of, describes the 10 offenses, and it's a basis also of our Vaishnava etiquette. So you might get some points repeated in that, but it's always good to repeat good points. But I'll try not to repeat what other teachers are going to repeat. We've tried to make it so you don't. But if things are very important, then we don't mind repeating them. But yeah, in Yoga Dharma, we will have Shikshastakam and the 10 offenses, and we'll have something on the Yoga Dharmas, and we'll also have something else. Just now I can't remember. But we'll try and we've got 5 days of an hour and a half to discuss all these things later on. And in Vaishnava etiquette itself, you'll also do something on chanting. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Hare Krishna, Stephanie.
Mataji, in the training for Tulsi Puja, are you qualified to only be able to worship Tulsi after initiation or before initiation? And who does this training?
Okay, so generally for the worship of Tulsi, we invite devotees. You don't have to be initiated, but you do have to understand the rules of cleanliness. We come to the temple dressed in, having had a bath and dressed in clean clothes, and for some of it's we wouldn't think of coming any other way, but for some other people who are not used to devotional service, they don't think of these things. The other thing, of course, for women is when you have your menstrual cycle, then you're not going to put water on Tulsi, you're not going to circumambulate Tulsi, and you're not going to do the arati. You're not going to receive the flame from the deep. But you can be there for the Tulsi worship. This whole thing is there. I'm sure Nagapatni will talk about in Vaishnava etiquette about what women can and can't do when they have their menstrual period. But Prabhupada allowed women to come into the temple. Generally, we stay at the back and don't approach the altar too much closely. Not that the deities can be ever contaminated by us, but simply out of respect for them. The thing is not of physical contamination, but we have to be aware of the contamination of the modes, because at that time the body is getting ready to reproduce, so it's mostly in the mode of passion. So because we know that the body is in the mode of passion, we refrain from doing certain things that should be done in the mode of goodness. Okay, anything else you want to ask?
The training for Tulsi Puja,
Training for
does
Tulsi.
one read and know how to do it on their own, or they have to be instructed by a senior devotee?
Well, generally, most devotees will learn by watching, because in a morning program doing Tulsi worship, somebody will be doing the worship and everyone else is standing around singing the songs. They can see what's happening. But in need of guidance, some senior devotee will add some guidance, like the correct number of circles. In the beginning, when Prabhupada was teaching worship, he taught very simply just to do for everything 7 big circles. But then he also instructed the devotees to learn from Radha Raman worship, to learn from Vallabha Sampradaya worship, and to learn some other devotees have excellent standards of worship. And so now we have the standard of, for offering the Agrabati, we offer 4 to the lotus feet, and then 2 to the navel, and then 7 circles to the whole body. Because for the Agrabati, we don't want to put smoke in their face, so we don't offer to their face. And when we offer the deep, we're offering 4 to the lotus feet, and 2 to the navel, and 3 to the head, and then 7 to the whole body. Now, according to which standard you read, for offering flowers, there are different standards. Generally, the Agrabati and the deep are set standards for all the artis when you're offering them. But for the flowers, there's 2 different concepts. One is to offer 7 circles to the whole body, and then you're meditating that flowers are falling from the sky. Like you'll read in the Krishna book and various places, how the demigods will throw flowers from the sky. So if you're doing 7 circles to the whole body, you're meditating on that flowers coming from the sky, being thrown by the demigods. And the other idea is to offer 4 circles to the lotus feet. And your meditation to offer flowers to the lotus feet is that you're offering you're offering flowers or petals to the lotus feet of who you're worshipping. And so that's simple. Tulsi worship is like that, is simple. You learn the basic archman before you start. You don't wear socks, because for puja we don't wear socks. But other than that, it's quite simple. It's not strict standards.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay, I have one letter here where Srila Prabhupada is giving instructions on Tulsi. Yeah, as I said, I think you're studying the actual service to Tulsi in another class. But I wanted to read just a few things about this, which shows Srila Prabhupada's mood for serving Tulsi Maharani, for worshipping Tulsi. So he's writing to Govinda Dasi. So Govinda Dasi was the one who took Tulsi to America. Before that, they'd tried to grow her, but unsuccessfully. So she was in Hawaii, where the weather is much nicer, and she was able to start Tulsi. Of course, it was all illegal to take seeds into America, but nevertheless, in service of Srila Prabhupada, the devotees snuck them in and started growing Tulsi in America. So Srila Prabhupada writes, "Please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 2nd of April, 1970. I'm very much pleased for the nice sentiments you expressed wherein." Okay, let's skip a little bit. "I'm also so very glad to learn that Srimati Tulsi Devi has favored you so much. If you actually grow this Tulsi plant, and I'm sure you will do it, then you must know for certain that your devotion for Krishna is testified. I was very much anxious to introduce this worship of Tulsi plant amongst our society members, but it has not become successful till now. Therefore, when I hear that you have got this opportunity, my pleasure does not have any bounds. Please take care of Tulsi plants in the following way. Best season for Tulsi plants. Okay, sowing, this will depend on the season where you are. From 15th of April to 15th of June is the best season for sowing the plants. And how to transplant the seedlings when they come up. Pour water, protect the seedlings from sparrows. All the devotees should pour water at least once in the morning before taking prasadam. The watering should not be very much large in quantity, but it should be poured just as to keep the ground soft and moist. Sunlight should also be allowed. When the seedlings are 7 inches high, you can transplant them. I don't think this plant can grow in cold countries. Now, please note this picture that I've got in the background here is in Vancouver. So this is a Tulsi house which has got all the conveniences for Tulsi Maharani, and look how she's growing. In Vancouver they have very cold weather, they have snow and all sorts of things. So a Tulsi house like this will have both lighting and heating and air circulation. Tulsi likes fresh air as well. So now he goes on to say, Tulsi leaf is very, very dear to Vishnu. All Vishnu Tattva deities require profusely Tulsi leaves. Lord Vishnu likes a garland of Tulsi leaves. Tulsi leaves mixed with sandalwood pulp and placed on the lotus feet of the Lord is a topmost worship. But we must be very careful that the Tulsi leaves cannot be placed on the feet of anyone else except for Lord Vishnu and his different forms. Tulsi leaves cannot even be placed on the lotus feet of Radharani or on the lotus feet of the spiritual master. It is entirely reserved for being placed on the lotus feet of Krishna. You can, however, place Tulsi leaves in the hands of Radharani for her to offer to Krishna. And he gives the mantras. And then, So carrying on, he talks again about Tulsi plants. Regarding the installation of the deities for which you are preparing, I wish to go there as soon as there are many Tulsi leaves growing. You are trying to grow mango very soon, but it would be better if you could sow the Tulsi leaves. Grow soon the Tulsi leaves. This is more important than growing mangoes. You should give your best attention for this purpose, and as soon as you inform me that there is a regular bush of Tulsi plants, then I shall immediately start for Hawaii and install your deities. I think this will satisfy you. Okay, so that's how important Srila Prabhupada found Tulsi. He will come and install the deities as soon as there is a Tulsi plant to offer Tulsi leaves to the deities. Another thing you'll know in your, if you know the appearance of, when Bhakti Vinod Thakur found the appearance place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, does anyone know how they recognized that place in the first place? It was because in that place there was only Tulsi plants growing. So the land actually belonged to a Muslim. And so when the devotees went there, they were extremely surprised. What's this Muslim farmer doing with so many Tulsi plants? So they went and asked him, so why are you growing so many Tulsi plants in your farm? And the Muslim says, don't you know I'm trying to get rid of them, but they keep growing. I can't grow anything else in that place. The only thing that will grow is Tulsi plants. So then when Jagannath Das Babaji came, Maharaj was brought to check the place. He jumped out of his chair and danced and anything, even though he was more than 90 years old and he could hardly walk. And he said, yes, we found, so Jagannath Das Babaji is acknowledged for finding the place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but along with Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And the place was because it was profusely growing in Tulsi trees. So like that, it's auspicious for the devotees to grow Tulsi plants. It's one thing we've only just been successful recently because I wasn't able to get up to the roof to plant our plants. And Tulsi Maharani, she really likes some light and some air. Even shade, too much shade, she doesn't like it all. And being inside, she doesn't like it all. She can come in, but she has to go out into the sunshine again. Otherwise, after 2 or 3 weeks, she'll drop her leaves. No matter how much light inside you put, she'll drop her leaves after some time. So this winter we've got our Tootsie upstairs, but with some extra lights and heat lights as well, just to keep them warm and comfortable. Okay, does anyone have any questions from this class here about Tulsi Prayers or the aspects of prayers that we were talking about?
Mataji, it's like why we close the altars before doing Tuesday Aarti?
So the general etiquette is that we should not worship anyone before the deities. Now that's also a nectar of devotion. It's one of the offences. There is an exception for that. Do you know what the exception is? There is one worship that we do with the altars open. We'll be discussing tomorrow.
Srila Prabhupada.
Huh?
Srila Prabhupada's photos can be placed before the altar.
Yes, we're also doing Guru Puja when the altar is open, right? So this is very special exception which Srila Prabhupada has put in place. We'll discuss this much more when we discuss Founder Acharya, to establish Srila Prabhupada as our preeminent Acharya for all time. So he is allowed, actually Guru Tattva we'll also speak about tomorrow. The Guru Tattva is non-different from Krishna. The original Guru is Krishna. And you'll hear in other places it's Balaram, and you'll hear in other places it's Nityananda. But basically, original Guru is Krishna. He wants to distribute his love of Godhead everywhere. And Guru Tattva is non-different from that. So, allowing this Guru Puja of Srila Prabhupada only, not of the other devotees, not of the other acharyas, even the other gurus and now who are disciples of Srila Prabhupada. But Srila Prabhupada Guru Puja is one puja that's allowed in front of the open curtains. Because it's so important to acknowledge Srila Prabhupada's place as our founder Acharya and as our supreme Guru, like that. But otherwise, it's an offense to honor someone in front of the deities, and it's an offense to circumambulate someone in front of the deities. It's an offense to praise someone in front of the deities, like that. It's also an offense to chastise someone in front of the deities or to be angry at someone in front of the deities. We should always remember that the deity is the center of our life and nothing else is more important than us showing the respect for the deities. Okay, someone else?
We also don't pay obeisance in front of altars.
Yeah, general etiquette is not to pay obeisances to anyone else while the deities are open. Exception, we shouldn't even pay obeisances very close to the altar, even if our spiritual master comes in. But I do say to devotees that you can do it from a distance, like from the back of the temple. You can pay obeisances, because otherwise people feel very awkward about not paying obeisances to their spiritual master. So I say, okay, from a distance, but keep away from the main altar. Don't do it right in front of the main altar, because even to pay obeisances to anybody, to show respect to anybody, is not proper etiquette.
Mataji, in front of Prabhupada also we don't pay obeisances.
Yeah, Prabhupada is... Well, we pay obeisances to Prabhupada. We can pay obeisances to Prabhupada while the deity curtains are open. Is that what you mean? Because we do that before paying obeisances to the deities. Like our general order is first we pay obeisances to Guru and then to Gaunitai. Gaunitai is always on the left. So we're paying our obeisances with our left side facing the deities. So we're going from left to right across the altar. So Gaunitai is generally on the left, and then we come to the other deities, which may be Radha, Krishna, or Jagannath, or Krishna Balaram, or whatever else. But generally, we first pay obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, and then to Gaunitai, and then to the main deities who are there, if they're there. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? All right, so thank you very much for this, coming and listening. And try and meditate on the mood of prayers. And we follow the Acharya's prayers because they do know how to write in the correct mood. So if we follow their prayers, then we get a good idea of how to properly offer prayers. Tomorrow we'll be looking at Guru Vandana, the prayer to the Guru, which is also, we'll also include something on Guru Tattva in that as well, because we should properly understand the position of Guru. So I'll let you go. You've got 15 minutes left before your next class. And thank you very much for attending. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Thank you.